Greta to the rescue and the dumbest bill in America. This is Mark Fisher with the Mark of the Millennials. And the millennial joining me today is Garrick Ross.
How are we doing, Mark?
Doing great. I heard you had finals or something like that yesterday.
Yeah, I'm officially a college graduate now.
Oh, right. Congratulations to Garrick.
It has been the best, worst 4 years of my life.
And your degree is in?
Political science.
Okay, very good. So what do you do with a degree like that?
I go back to school.
Okay. Probably law school, right?
Law school, yeah.
That's what I figured, yeah. I mean, we need more people in journalism, that's for sure.
Yeah, you know, I could always start writing and people would hate me.
And we also have with us today Christopher Hopkins, our assistant producer, and Adam Katura, our producer. It is Mark and the Millennials, but of course we have one millennial because of social distancing. We have had difficulty getting all the millennials present because they have real jobs, they're working from home, but in addition to that, at least they're working. You know, at least they have jobs.
Apparently I don't have a real job, but it's okay.
You do have a job.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
You know, we usually cut these sometimes in the evenings and sometimes at lunchtime, of course. That way people can take a break. Here. Yep, that's right. So this podcast is called Greta to the Rescue. That is Greta Thunberg, which I think the proper pronunciation, ask Anderson Cooper, because he does it so well. It's like Greta Thunberg or something like that. I'm not really sure the proper, but let's call her Thunberg because that would be the English pronunciation.
Yeah.
Apparently she's on a CNN town hall.
Yes.
A CNN town hall, which was just aired.
It was, yeah. I heard all about this.
And you know what the interesting thing is CNN thought it was so important that this 17-year-old, by the way, Greta Thunberg is now 17 years old. She's 17. She's still a minor, but she's an expert on the pandemic.
You know, this is a little news to me.
She's apparently an expert. So they brought her on with Anderson Cooper and Dr. Sanjay Gupta, which is the contributing doctor to, of course, that talks about the pandemic on CNN. And they ask her a bunch of questions. And it's really interesting because you have to look at the faces of Anderson Cooper and Sanjay Gupta because when they're interviewing her and they ask a question, they're acting like they're learning something for the first time. That this oracle that is Greta Thunberg is just so incredibly woke and so much smarter than them that they're actually learning something.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sorry, either CNN has the dumbest audience in America.
I mean,
which I think they
Sanjay
probably
Gupta
do.
is only a world-renowned doctor and published writer in his own right and probably one of the smartest people in the world. But okay.
But he's listening to Greta.
He's going to learn a thing or two today.
We're in a pandemic. You could interview all kinds of people to get all kinds of diverse opinions about what you should be doing. Greta Thunberg?
I think I have an interesting take on this. And while I certainly think you and I agree on this, I think it is worth understanding
what a 17-year-old thinks.
Because I think, believe it or not, whether any of us in this room particularly like it or not, I think that there is a large swath of people in my generation who think that Greta is onto something and that she is truly the oracle that we joke about.
Really?
I do think that there's a lot of people who put a lot of credence in somebody who is an activist and who believes in something and is willing to go out there and
I think
fight.
She's an actress, not an activist. That's what I think. I think she was put up to it by her parents. And it's a money-making machine, and she's very good at it, but I think she's been coached and has gone to acting school probably with, individuals who have given her one-on-one acting lessons. That's what I think.
There's definitely people who are managing her, I don't think a lot of people can come to a lot of these things on their own, and the level of fame and, how she's been in all the right places at the right time, that's something that's not particularly natural often. And so she's definitely been being coached a little bit. But I still think it is, we can sit and we can joke about it all we want, and we are going to, and just in general, everybody's going to.
Yes, we are.
But do listen to what she says.
Yes.
And take it with a grain of salt because there are a lot of people out there who really believe these things.
Who listen to her. And look, one thing about Mark and the Millennials is one of the reasons why our clips are longer than most podcasts. It's really simple. It's because we don't want to take the clips out of context.
Yeah,
we want you to actually listen.
Yeah.
And so we're not playing gotcha clips. We're actually playing the whole clips. Yeah. That's why we have a 3-clip series of the CNN Global Town Hall with Greta Thunberg.
Yeah, so you can get
Sanjay Gupta.
The whole spiel.
So you can get the whole spiel. So here is the first of 3 clips, and you got to listen to it.
You have millions of young people who follow you online, and I know you've been talking with them about taking this virus seriously. Your symptoms, whether you had COVID or not, the symptoms you had were very mild. You were saying milder than other times you've been sick. But one of the points you made, I was reading on your Instagram, is that kids should take it seriously because not only could there be, underlying conditions, but also, even if their symptoms are very mild, it's still possible to infect family members.
Yes, exactly, and that's why I decided to post about it, to sort of spread the information that many people don't even notice that they have symptoms, and then they might spread the virus without even knowing it.
So there you go. So basically, Anderson Cooper gave the question and the answer, and to which Greta Thunberg said, yes, that is true. Well, gee, thank you so much for the information. Now, is it indeed the case that she has several million followers on Twitter?
Yes.
And on other social media platforms? I'm sure she does. And do children listen to her? Maybe some of them do, so maybe there is some benefit to Greta Thunberg putting information out like, hey, you could infect your grandparents, you could infect your parents, and you may not even know that you actually have had COVID or have it currently. So go ahead.
I'm going to throw my generation under the bus.
Yes!
A lot of us are particularly stupid, and we do a lot of really stupid things.
Okay.
And, not heeding some of the social distancing guidelines, I'm going to put up at number 1A in stupid things that we've probably done over the course of the last month. I mean, when this first started happening, it was around spring break time, right?
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many videos, Snapchats, like all these social media posts I saw where people just were like, oh, there's a global pandemic and everything's shut down, but man, we're going to Miami Beach for the week and we're going to rage. And we're going to get, within 5 feet of each other, and then we're going to go back home to our families when school shut down, and we're going to get them all sick. And so I think, again,
In fact, there was a report of one dad who wouldn't let his son back in the house.
So he made him sleep in the car for 2 weeks.
It's right.
It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. I was that dad's #1 fan.
Absolutely.
It was so great.
Dad's like, I'm glad you had a good time, son. You're not welcome in my house.
He was like, here's $300 and here's a car, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Incredible. That is parenting at its finest.
Yeah, it is. So Dr. Sanjay Gupta of CNN on the CNN global town hall about the pandemic with Greta Thunberg, Dr. Sanjay Gupta asks Greta, what about the effect of the pandemic on children? Well, they kind of already asked that question. And Greta, of course, naturally English is the second language, so good for her because her English is very good.
Yeah.
It's a little slow, of course, to listen to, but it's worth listening to because here's the premise. She has said on her Twitter account, Greta has, that she thinks she had COVID, thinks that she had it, but she's not really sure.
Interesting.
And quite honestly, if you're a celeb, right, like she is, because she's a legit celeb for a certain number of people, a few million people who follow her.
My generation's view of what a celebrity is going to be very different than what you traditionally view as a celebrity.
Okay.
We get them from different mediums and things like that.
So is she a celebrity in your generation?
Yeah.
Even though she's 17?
She's she's a social media figure. She's,
Okay.
You would joke and call them influencers.
Influencers.
That's what we would call her.
So she's saying that she thinks maybe she has. So instead of Dr. Sanjay Gupta asking her questions like, well, why do you think you thought you had this? What were your symptoms? What did it feel like when you had it? Stuff like maybe people who are younger would actually want to understand and hear. He doesn't ask her those questions. He just says, well, how do you feel about the effect this pandemic's having on children? That doesn't give any information, right? It's just, I'm sorry, when you watch CNN, you just get stupider, including with this doctor. We have this clip, and here it is.
So I don't know if you had heard that before, Greta, just this similarity to Kawasaki disease. But when you hear that, I mean, how does it make you feel? Does it make you feel like it's more frightening, that there's more of a mystery? What do you think?
Well, I mean, of course, that is very true. It's sort of a myth right now that children are not this virus, and that is, of course, very wrong. Children both do get this disease, and they also spread it onto others. So we need to be very careful that this misinformation that it doesn't affect children becomes mainstream. We need to make sure that people understand that this also affects children.
Yeah, so she basically spent 45 seconds saying we need to make sure that people know that this affects children, because right before that she kind of intimated that she had it, or she thinks she had it, but she can't prove that she had it, and she's not willing to talk about what it's just, I'm sorry. this is just such bad TV. I mean, who are they talking to?
Yeah, I didn't think it was a really good answer. And I think it's a shame because I think it was an opportunity to give a very good answer because I think there's something that, you know, conservatism and or the Republican Party or just anybody who's interested in like a free and open government and that kind of an advocate could have provided a good answer pertaining to children because inevitably they are the future, and I do think Republicans have a children issue in terms of how we address them as bringing them into the fold. And
bringing them into the fold as in getting them to understand the value of the benefit of conservative values?
Yes, but as a result of in a COVID context, you know, I think that, you know, most children.
So using a pandemic as an opportunity to get people in your political.
Not necessarily like, you know, political indoctrination, but it's like presenting things in a way that allow younger generations to understand the full grasp of an issue. Because if you often look at how young children approach values, it's through influencers like, you know, Greta Thunberg or any number of people in that space.
Which is kind of sad because it's a little superficial.
Yeah, and sure, and that's.
I'm sorry, from a boomer perspective, it's
but that's part of my
superficial.
point is that, you know, we don't have
that's like
anybody
saying,
who does.
You watch the
anything
Kardashians,
like
so
that.
that's the kind of wedding you want to have, right? Because the Kardashian lifestyle, that's, you know, that's what you aspire to be. But it's like, I'm sorry, but there's a lot more substance in life than just that.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
way things look.
Exactly. But my thing is like, you know, she's one of the people who is addressing it. And
agree.
we all sit here and we're saying that we don't agree with anything she just said. Because we don't think
she's not saying
didn't say anything. Yes, but there's a lot of kids who are going to look at that. But I think there's an opportunity for people in general to approach children. Because I think truly this is going to be a traumatic experience for a lot of children, especially with things like education.
Of course, loss of grandparents,
loss of grandparents, the overall
loss
educational aspect of this too.
Sure.
I mean, basically an entire year of childhood development education is.
It's going to create a lot of anxiety.
A lot of anxiety and a lot of things.
Which we already have a problem with anyway in this country.
And it's an opportunity
to.
Yeah, that's another thing too. I mean, I just graduated. One of the classes I had to take was an interesting family studies course that dealt with, you know, the changing in values of children. Where your generation was, your top worry was, you know, being happy and having a good time. Where kids our age tend to, because of social media, they see everything going on in the world and they think that elevate it to this very important thing in their psyche, and this is going to be one of those things.
And they feel like they're missing out.
They feel like they're missing out,
and they're very anxious about it, or they see something that is a snapshot, just like Snapchat. Here's a Snapchat of what this person's doing, and then you think, oh no, my life really is bad compared to them.
Because you're comparing highlight to highlight.
Because Snapchat is a snapshot in time.
Yeah, it doesn't give you the full picture.
It is. So Anderson Cooper asks Greta, how about the science? And isn't it important in this pandemic? Here is the crux of this interview. Here's the whole reason why CNN did this town hall with Dr. Sanjay Gupta and Anderson Cooper and, of course, Greta Thunberg. This is the reason. Listen closely to this clip because really this is what it's all about. Here it is.
We can see now the scientific community are stepping up, and they are speaking up more than they're done before because obviously this is a crisis that would require the scientific community to speak up. And I hope that people really, it feels like science is getting, the role of science is changing now. It's becoming more, people are starting to realize that we are actually depending on science and that we need to listen to scientists and experts. And I really hope that that stays, and that also is for other crises such as the climate crisis and the environmental crisis, that we actually understand that we have to listen to the scientists.
So we have to listen to the scientists. We have to let scientists drive everything in life, especially with not just the pandemic, but also with the climate crisis, the environmental crisis, and there it is. This is what Anderson Cooper really wanted to get out of this conversation, because CNN is trying to tie the pandemic to the so-called climate change movement. They have nothing to do with one another, because with the pandemic, we have a Chinese Communist Party, which is clearly weaponizing various viruses. There's no doubt about it. Now, they say they're studying them in, the Department of Virology in Wuhan, China, and I have no doubt they are studying them. But why are they studying them?
Yeah, what do you need to know?
Why are they messing with these things that can get loose, which did, apparently.
Yeah.
And so far, we think that managed to get out of the door of the laboratory by accident. At least that's what we're being told so far. But she's trying to equate the pandemic, which was caused by, created by
so
humans.
was this whole interview. It's not her. I mean, they basically put the ball on a tee and told her to hit it.
Absolutely.
They this is partly their thinking as well too. And I hate the notion that somehow because Republicans have an alternative solution to climate change that, we're anti-science, or that, our things fall short because it's not, basically reinventing the wheel and, putting solar panels and wind turbines in everybody's property. We have our own very delicate way of approaching this.
We believe in innovation.
Yeah, innovation.
Okay?
Carbon capture technology, the innovation of nuclear reactors, which far and away are the most efficient way.
Any kind of carbon or any kind of emissions whatsoever. Yep. Yes.
But since it's not their grand environmental, strategy,
and they don't profit from that.
Yeah, it's,
right.
We're suddenly anti-science here.
Exactly.
And even then, when we're talking about the science of the pandemic, I mean, look how many people in the scientific community have gotten it right, and look at how many have gotten it wrong. It's been so, wishy-washy depending on which state you even live in. I mean, look at the scientists in New York City, how wrong they were, but look at the ones down in Florida. But the media will never tell you that, because if you look at, Ron DeSantis versus Andrew Cuomo, somehow because Ron DeSantis has done a good job, he's a bad guy in the news, but whereas Cuomo had that disastrous nursing home policy.
Oh my gosh.
He is still, he is the
policy
best.
that literally murdered people.
Is an excellent governor in this time. And it's just, it's a lot of the frustration that I think that I have. And I'm one who tries to give people the benefit of the doubt, but it's like when you look at the evidence, it's striking.
Well, I do think that Greta Thunberg's movement is going to actually gain steam, not just from this interview, but also from the fact that they're trying to create a nexus with the pandemic and climate change.
And that's one of my points from the previous clip
it's
that we were talking about.
It's a false nexus.
Yeah,
it is not so.
Yeah, and this goes back to my point from the last clip is we need to be willing to go and talk and articulate and not just sit here and be like, and I don't mean like that we're doing anything wrong here, but I think people are willing to just sit and look at Greta and be like, she's an idiot and move on and, make fun of her. But there is definitely an influence in what she is saying on people, and rather than just kind of sitting back and
okay, so here's what's
we
interesting.
need to engage it.
So communists have always been the kind of political kind of government that does not respect the environment. So
sure, yeah. Just look at all the pollution in China. I mean, I think it's one of the major sources.
China is a disaster environmentally, right?
Yeah.
And they've proven that they're willing to make the environment even worse by the fact that they're willing to eat just about anything that's alive. And that does plunder the environment. I'm sorry. If you're willing to go out into the wild and just kill anything and eat anything without actually thinking about it. And there is obviously credence to the idea that when you have 1.35, 1.4 billion people.
A lot of people.
Is that sustainable, right?
That's a seventh of the earth.
And the answer to the question is, if you are a really innovative society and you are a steward of the environment, then it probably is sustainable. Yes, of course it's sustainable. But the thing is the Anderson Coopers of the world and the Greta Thunbergs of the world are basically blaming Western civilization.
Yeah.
And we're the ones who have the clean environment. We're the ones that are cleaning up the environment where we have in the past polluted. We're the ones who are improving the environment. And we're the ones who are doing so through education.
Also,
right?
mind you,
I
we're
believe in
the
doing it through
only people
education.
who are open and honest about when we make mistakes.
What? Because of transparency.
We do things wrong, and bad things happen. Deepwater Horizon was probably one of the worst environmental disasters of my lifetime. But we know about it, we deal with it, and we learn from it, and we go on about our lives in hopes of making the world a better place environmentally in the future. Whereas, again, I'm going to talk about the Soviet Union here.
Like Chernobyl. Chernobyl's a great example.
It took
they didn't
months for them to be open and honest about it. The only reason we found out about it was because the radiation cloud was so huge, it reached Norway or Finland in one of their nuclear labs, who were able to pick up the signal and be like, I think a reactor just exploded in Ukraine. But this is the thing, we're open and honest about these things, and we're willing to take the criticism and deal with it, whereas people and these activists look at this open and honest transparency as a negative, is we're doing all these bad things. But I think the fact that we acknowledge that we do bad things is important for the future. I agree with you.
That's a great point. I don't want to give the impression that I don't think Greta Thunberg should have an outlet to be able to talk about to have free speech,
Of
to talk
course,
about
yeah.
her opinion. I think
It's
she
part of
should.
the discourse
I think
and the
she should.
dialogue.
But here's the thing: when you're 17 years old, and of course she's 17 now, and you decide to step into the international arena and start pointing fingers and start making up things like that you need to listen to scientists because they are the definitive and final answer when it comes to climate change, without even defining, first of all, what the hell is climate change?
You know,
right? Tell me what climate change is. Because
Greta,
we do ban bills in the dumbest bill in America all the time.
All the time.
And all the time,
I think we have one today.
We have one today, and they say, well, it's because of climate change. It's like, no, I thought climate change was when the climate actually is changing because of what we're
environmental
doing.
pollution is a separate issue from climate. Well, I mean, there's areas where they relate, but a lot of these ban bills, it's under the guise of climate change, whereas the issue we're talking about has nothing to do with climate change.
And I just want to make clear, I mean, we believe we're stewards of the environment. In fact, Republicans do believe in innovation, which will solve, of course, environmental pollution.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is she's not going to this. Why doesn't she go to the former Soviet Union, Russia now? Why doesn't she go to China? Why doesn't she do a tour on China?
About saying, she's 17 in the environment. When I look at Greta and I try to debate her topics with you or anybody else, I don't look at her as solely the voice and being 17. I kind of look at her as part of a puzzle, one piece in a bigger puzzle, a bigger apparatus. So, while she may be the vocal, the talking point,
I look at her as a pawn.
I
She's
look at
being
her
used
as
a
like
pawn.
the George Bush to Dick Cheney. You kind of know who's really talking, but who's really saying the words. So there's definitely, we're not just debating her. We're debating a lot of other people who are using her to project.
Yeah, well, certainly Anderson Cooper and Sanjay Gupta on
yeah,
CNN
exactly.
are using her to be able to advance a narrative, because here's what they're trying to do. At the end of the day, Anderson Cooper and Sanjay Gupta had Greta Thunberg on because they're trying to scare the living you-know-what out of the people in the United States.
The people that follow her.
So that they will stay home.
Young people.
So that they will think that there's climate change occurring and that is the pandemic that's causing it. And then they'll be so hysterical, the economy will collapse, and they'll say, well, we can't reelect Donald, because that's what this is about for CNN. I'm not saying for Greta Thunberg, right?
No, yeah.
I think
for her, it really is about the environment.
She
really does believe in the things that she says.
At least I'm not sure if that's the case. I think she's being used by her parents, but that's just my personal opinion. And to prove that, we actually have her speech to the UN. Just 6 months ago, by the way, she had this speech to the UN. We were talking about it 6 months ago, long before the pandemic.
To be open with you all in podcast land, I think this will be probably the first time that I've ever listened to this clip in full. So you're going to get nothing but my unabridged reaction. I heard about it, and I thought it, and I read a snapshot of it, and I was like, I don't know that I can do this.
The clip's only 45 seconds, so I just want to say, so Squirrel, when he's on, he gets really upset when we play stuff about Greta Thunberg, because he thinks it's wrong because she's a minor. And my argument is this: yes, she's a minor, but she has stepped into the international arena and is presenting herself as an authority.
We do
without a single degree. She's an authority.
And people who step into the arena, you got to pull up your pants and take the lumps. I mean, and everybody is always critical of anybody, regardless of Republican or Democrat. I mean, look at, in the wake of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and that issue, you had David Hogg and Kyle Kashuv. I'm not very.
What are you talking about now?
They're two kids who are like Greta Thunberg.
Oh,
they're
yeah,
all
yeah,
over
yeah.
the news.
Yeah,
And, but people are critical of their ideas too, and so it's okay to
because of
debate
circumstances they
ideas
became
and
national
circumstances.
figures.
Yeah, exactly.
True.
And same with Greta. I mean, it's basically two similar circumstances.
I'm not really sure it was because of circumstances. I think it was very careful crafting by her parents, and also very careful crafting by
but the
a circle
circumstances
of
had to
people.
be right to allow her to be able to fill that.
True. Well, and also the education systems, I think, is such, at least here in the United States, in most of the United States, perhaps not the entire country, where it literally uses fear instead of talking about innovation. Look, today, if you were in a class today and they were talking about climate change, or global warming, or the environment in K-12 education in the United States of America, you know what they would talk about?
Solar energy.
The most likely thing with your teacher is they'll be talking about the destruction of the planet and so forth. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. It's a good idea to teach about the environment. I'm all for it. But you know what we're not teaching? We're not teaching the fact that human beings we are capable of solving problems.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's
through
not been
innovation.
a problem that the United States has encountered that it hasn't
We can
been
solve
able to solve
problems.
through innovation.
So anyway, here's Greta Thunberg 7 months ago, actually, in her speech to the United Nations, and here it is.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Ah, yes, and of course the UN, they're like, yeah, that's so fantastic, oh my gosh. You have these people who are some of the most allegedly educated people in the world, and they're clapping for a 17-year-old. And I just want to say this, okay, I have to say this. Everything that she said 7 months ago should be directed now toward China.
Sure,
okay,
yeah.
you are causing the collapse of the environment, which of course China. You have caused, you're causing people to die.
Look at coronavirus.
China. Okay.
Coronavirus, COVID-19.
Exactly.
I mean, basically apply the same sentiments to the ongoing issue. I mean, all the parallels that you claim are in,
But
climate
Garrett,
change
Anderson
are evident
Cooper,
in this. Yeah.
Anderson Cooper and Gupta, Dr. Gupta, they brought her on CNN. Wasn't about China though, was it?
No.
No, they talked. It was all about the West. We're the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, United States of America, we're the problem. We are some of the best stewards of the environment, and yet we're the problem.
In Western Europe, things like that. I mean, the West isn't just the United States. I mean, it's part of a greater. Basically,
yeah.
all the NATO countries, you could essentially say, are the West.
Well, Western Europe, the United States, obviously
Yeah.
the Western Hemisphere. as well as Europe, Western Europe. Yes, these countries are our allies, and we do care about the environment. But her speech to the UN could literally be given to China, to mainland China, to the Chinese communists.
And it should.
But of course, naturally, Anderson Cooper isn't going to ask that question. So get this, podcast listeners, CNN downplays its national poll showing the Trump lead over Biden in battleground states. So CNN took a poll, and the poll shows that nationwide, Biden is ahead of Trump. Okay, so nationwide, but that's not the way actually you are supposed to poll.
No.
What matters when you
State by
poll,
state.
it's state by state. If you
Well,
really
you can
want,
do a national poll if you want to gauge
Nothing wrong with a national
national
poll.
interest. It just doesn't do much for you in the realm of.
and the national
predicting
poll
winners and
does
losers.
give you information. For example, if one candidate today is ahead in the national poll, and then a month from now the other candidate is getting closer, then you can see that one candidate nationwide is gaining steam. And in theory, the statewide polls should show changes.
Yes.
Accordingly.
Yeah, and you can compare and contrast them and things like
But
that.
the fact of the matter is what CNN didn't do is they didn't say, oh yeah, Trump is behind nationwide, but they didn't tell you that he's actually ahead in some key battleground states. So here's what it says. It says Trump's biggest advantage over Biden in the poll, this is the CNN article, comes on his handling of the economy. Most voters, 54%, say they trust the president to do better, to better handle the nation's economy, while 42% say they prefer Biden on the economy.
Yeah.
An earlier release from the same CNN poll found the public's ratings of the economy at their worst level since 2013.
We are in the midst of
As a growing
giant-
share said the economic damage wrought by the coronavirus outbreak could be permanent. But Biden does have the advantage as more trusted to handle the response to the coronavirus outbreak. 51% Biden to 45% Trump, and healthcare, 54% Biden and 42% Trump. In other words, what the CNN poll did was they polled, Garrick, they
Yes.
polled the people of the United States, and they decided and found out, CNN did, Trump is still ahead on the economy.
Yes.
How's that possible with the economy tanking? The economy needs to tank more for CNN. That way they'll be so happy because then Biden will win.
Because I think people understand that, Trump didn't wake up one day, institute some grand policy that tanked the economy. He woke up and there was a international, environmental, and biological incident, and that is the reason for a lot of the economic realities we're facing today.
Sure.
Though I do think he does have an issue in that, in this poll, Trump does, dealing with people who think that Biden is the best choice to bring us out on the other end. I think there needs to be a segue made there where
Biden, who can't even get a sentence out.
Yeah, I think there does need to be some advertising to go in there to kind of make his case as to why he is. And I saw a really good video on Twitter. It was basically saying, Biden won't hold China accountable. And I think that this election, if Trump wants to win handedly, is to make this a referendum on China. So basically, my belief is whoever really sets the narratives.
And on the economy.
Yeah, and on the economy, but put the two of them together. You have
Absolutely.
to combine the two of them together.
And so the CNN poll actually showed that Trump has 52% to Biden's 45% in battleground states. And those
Yes.
battleground states puts Donald Trump over the mark for winning with the number of the 270 electoral college votes that he actually needs in order to win. But naturally, CNN was hyper-focused on the fact that Donald Trump is still favored in the economy, and therefore, since he's still favored in the economy, CNN has to figure out a way of knocking him down. That's why they had this CNN Global Town Hall that we just talked about with Greta Thunberg.
Yes.
Because, the whole idea is to create hysteria. And if that isn't enough, Brian Williams of MSNBC talks about the political divide in America versus opening up or keeping closed. And he talks to their doctor of the House on MSNBC. We have a clip on this, and here it is.
Doctor, it must be a bit of a maddening time to be in the public health business because we have two equal and opposite camps in our country who view their patriotic duty exactly opposite from one another. Some folks believe that staying out of circulation and staying home is their patriotic duty. Other folks believe it's the opposite, that only by getting out can they fulfill their patriotic duty. Do you think, Doctor, Americans are within their rights for feeling these days pretty much like they're on their own and hoping common sense will prevail?
Well, Brian, let me just start by commenting on Dr. Fauci's position and the conversation you just had. Dr. Fauci hasn't just been a leader leading this country through multiple outbreaks over the last decades, but he's also been an inspiration for generations of infectious diseases physicians, my entire profession.
He's a messiah.
With his steady hand and his wisdom, which is really what we need in this situation, because going back to your point, I think it's become a false dichotomy.
Ah, yes, MSNBC. In other words, Dr. Fauci is a messiah. We must only listen to him. You might be dying from the fact that you have no money and the fact that you can't go to the hospital because they're closed for procedures. You might actually be incredibly depressed and you can't see a mental health doctor because of the fact that you lost your job and you have no hope of ever getting it back. But that's what MSNBC wants, because after all, let's listen to Dr. Fauci and shut everything down until the day we have a vaccine, which could be, I don't know, a year? It could be never.
Dr. Fauci has no incentive to say anything other than that line. I mean, he's an infectious disease doctor. He has a stake in the idea of us remaining, from a professional level, us, staying in quarantine because it's the only, plausible circumstance where he can't be wrong.
Absolutely.
If he comes out and he says, we should go outside now and go back to normal, and he winds up being wrong, it looks terrible. So he's going to err on the side that'll give him the most, most cover in the event that something does go wrong, and that is going to be this position. But to take that as the penultimate response, and that we should always adhere to that, is a little absurd. I mean, look at the states that have opened back up. Let's look at Georgia, who is experiencing its lowest number of cases since the outbreak. Florida, who is experiencing its number of outbreaks. Texas, who never really got bad. Places that have been open,
And these are big states.
These are huge states.
Yeah, these are not small states.
Yeah, we're talking about, I think, 3 of the 10 biggest states in the country right there.
It's pretty remarkable.
It is pretty remarkable. And look, a lot of these places in the Midwest, yes, are they ticking up? But the numbers aren't astronomical. I mean, if you still want to talk about where all the cases are, there's really only 2 places, and it's New York and New York City.
But CNN and MSNBC, they are so invested in crashing this economy. And that's why I want the podcast listeners to know, that's why we included all those very difficult to listen to Greta Thunberg clips, as well as from MSNBC and others, because when you do listen to these clips, you get a sense that there's a whole part of our media that isn't the least bit interested in trying to find a solution. But you know what? The day after November 4th...
Well, they found their solution.
After November 4th.
It's the only solution.
Yeah, right. It's the only solution.
Regardless of the applicability of it. I mean, would I love everybody to be able to sit in home? First of all, we were supposed to sit at home for 2 weeks, and then it would all be fine. We could go back to our lives.
And then extended it
2 months later, and a lot of people are saying, oh, actually, like LA is saying, maybe till July. Well, LA said, quote, for the foreseeable future. They didn't even give a date on it.
There's no date, right, which is useless.
Certain places here in Maryland have said, we'll do June. You know, we'll do random dates and numbers.
Just random dates.
You know, you can't go through this cycle all the time. Look, I
And
don't.
people are adults; they can figure it out. Go ahead.
Yeah. You know, I saw a clip on Twitter. If everybody gets a chance, go look at El Prez from Barstool, Dave Portnoy. He had a really good point about this.
That was an awesome clip.
His point's spot on. It started out, it was supposed to be 2 weeks.
Yes.
You know, and we all did it. You know,
Yes.
and look, did people violate social distancing? Sure. My generation, we sucked. I already talked about this. But in general, I would say that this has probably been
Because you're trying to kill off the millennials. That's what you've been trying to do that for years.
well, you know, Mark, they've been calling this the Great Boomer Remover.
That's right, the boomer remover. Oh boy.
God, yeah. But I think generally, to give people credit for the most part, everybody's done their job. You know, I go out, everybody's wearing masks, everybody stays apart, everybody's very cognizant of what is going on here. And it was supposed to be 2 weeks, and then we would figure it out from there. We'd have a plan. But you know, 2 weeks has turned into 2 months, and here we are going through this vicious cycle over and over again.
It's true.
And nobody has any solution.
People want hope. They want to know when they can go out.
Because
And here's
it's
what I
not
tell-
sustainable.
It's not sustainable. But would you tell everybody out there, look, if you're healthy, and then you should go back to work?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, to me, it's that simple.
Because-
and by the way, take responsibility.
Look
Take
at the amount
responsibility
of
for what you do.
people who are unemployed, can't get through to their unemployment place. Look, if the government wants to shut it down, you got to be there to help the people.
Yeah, they're
And
not.
It has been
They're
a
not.
miserable failure to the likes. The closest reference would be the Obamacare exchange when it first went online. I mean, the inability of states to have handled these unemployment claims have
They
been
can't because
impossibly bad.
it's too many. Their systems have crashed. They can't handle them.
There are hundreds of thousands of people in every state who
They can't tell
were
which
told
ones are
that they
legit.
can't go to work, but then
true.
the government told them, you know what, you're on your own about getting unemployment
very
because
true.
we're not going to pick up the tab for you and figure it out for you. I mean, through my job, I spend all day helping out these people, and I feel so terrible because all I can do is just direct them to the place, and the place doesn't do anything for them.
Yep. That's your other job when you're not here at
Yeah,
lunchtime
my
or
boss
the
doesn't
evenings
know I'm
doing
here.
podcasts.
Don't tell him.
So get this, podcast listeners. So we have a great story for you, and stories are always fun. So my wife and I were out shopping, and we were actually, to be frank with you, buying vegetable plants because we're going to do a garden, like a victory garden back during the wars, of course, except that, you know, just in case, we actually had vegetables that we're growing this summer. Why not? Because there were and have been shortages in certain parts of the country in certain kinds of foodstuffs, right?
Yes.
So we went to the garden center.
Okay.
And so we're shopping around. We got a cart, put the vegetable plants on the cart. And this lady stops and sees my wife. By the way, everybody had to wear a mask. It was a requirement just to get in. So naturally, I put my mask on. My wife has one of these masks it's like a designer mask that you buy online because she liked it. Mine's just a regular mask you would see at a hospital, right? Typical guy. He's like, whatever, I'm just gonna cover my face with whatever I have. So this lady walks over to my wife. She goes, I love your mask. I love your mask. And I'm like, these are words I never thought I would hear before. I'm covering my face. My wife's, and by the lady said it to my wife, but I'm thinking, you know, we're covering our faces, and someone comes over and instead of saying, hey, I like your makeup to my wife, I like your
your
lipstick,
mask.
your eyeliner, your hair looks great. Of course, that's impossible because you can't can't really go to a salon if you're a woman, especially now anyway, in certain states that is. But instead, it's, I love your mask.
Mark, you know what your wife's going to ask for Christmas or her birthday, whichever one comes first? She's going to want a designer mask, Mark. She's going to need her Michael Kors mask or her Chanel mask. It's gonna be the new fad, Mark. When this is all over, we're not putting the masks down. They're
Michael
gonna be
Kors
the
mask.
new accessory. The new accessory.
And so for podcast listeners, Garrick the millennial here today is going to have a Joe Exotic mask.
Tiger King, baby. Tiger King. Heck yeah. Give me
You're gonna have
some little mini tigers.
all kinds of interesting people stopping by and saying, I really like your mask.
Joe Exotic.
Are you in Tinder?
Oh, boy.
So, but you have to admit, though, talk about a sign of the times in a pandemic. Someone actually going
Anything
over to
make-
your wife.
Anything to make light out of things, I guess.
But the lady was serious. It was like, this is a new way of, really adding accessories to your face, is covering it up. I mean, if I didn't know any better, we were in the Middle East. People were wearing, oh, you like my mask? You should see my burqa,
Jesus.
I don't care if it's politically incorrect. Okay, so next up, Google cuts diversity programs over fears of seeming anti-conservative. So,
What was that?
yeah, believe it or not, it's in Forbes magazine. So Google cuts diversity programs because they're afraid they're going to seem anti-conservative, meaning that Google had all these programs like they wanted to have a certain amount of Hispanics, a certain amount of women, a certain amount of men, a certain amount of African Americans.
Working for their company?
Out of imagine every single gender, that Google recognizes, which I'm sure are dozens, but also every single race and every single whatever. That's what Google wanted, and they wanted to have that equally represented, I guess, in accordance with their population in the United States,
honestly,
working for Google.
I, as a free market, pro-business person, I don't really care if a company chooses to do that on their own. I think that's their own prerogative.
Yes, it is. But the thing is Google has enormous amounts of power.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
And the fear is that we already know that Google is incredibly anti-conservative and anti-Republican. We know that. I mean, they're certainly anti-conservative.
Yeah, they're definitely not on our team.
They're not. They're not. And the thing is now Google is just really coming out in the open about who they really are. We have an interview from 2 years ago about this, but this article is actually recent. The interview is not recent. It was 2 years ago from an individual that worked at Google and actually had to leave because of the fact that he was kind of outed for being a conservative.
Yeah, I remember hearing about
and wasn't
this.
even allowed to participate in anything. He's basically an outcast because that's who Google really is. Here's the clip.
Yeah, I've talked to a few, and it seems like it's gotten even worse, where they've doubled down on some of this diversity rhetoric, and people are even more afraid now to speak up.
So if you have even a mildly different view, you're crushed.
Tucker.
Right. And so, surveys show that about 80% of conservatives now don't want to talk about anything at work.
Yeah, so conservatives can't even talk or openly at work. Look, if you're at work, it's only natural.
About politics at work in general,
but it's only natural you're going to make friends.
Yeah.
And some of your friends are going to start wanting to know more about you.
Yeah.
So of course it always starts out with the simple stuff. Where are you from? Where were you raised? Where'd you go to school? How about college? Tell me about your parents. What did they do? And then before you know it, the person, let's just say they start to, you get along, and you want to go out and have a few beers, and then they find out after maybe you've had a few beers, and you're tipsy or what have you, you basically tell them, you know what? Yeah, I'm a Donald Trump supporter, and you work at Google, and the first thing that happens is, oh, this will be the last time we're going out. And in the real world, of course you make friends where you work, and of course you have these conversations. It's only normal.
It's a weird time where I think that, who you support politically or, what your political views are, supersedes who you are as a person or as a friend.
And it shouldn't.
And I hate that, people put stock into things like that as, affecting whether or not they should be friends or not,
Agreed.
Am I involved in politics? Yes. Do I do this? Do I do other things? Sure. But is politics really who I am?
No, of course not. It
it's
should not define you.
It shouldn't
I
define
agree.
any of us. And I think, Republicans are guilty of doing this too. Heaven forbid, some Republicans see somebody says, I'm a Democrat, they'll lose their mind over it. And it's politics should only be so much of our lives.
It should not define friendships.
And it should
I
not
agree.
define friendships, and it shouldn't define how we interact in social spaces. I mean, at the end of the day, as much as we all get on the other side about what we believe there be their transgressions, we all should still be on the same team.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
We should all be going for the goal of making this country a better place. And a lot of that starts with how we all deal with each other. I think it's part of the reason that this country has such a degree of division and mistrust in each other is that we view political ideology as this taboo topic where
And as
heaven forbid
we
you're
say
on
that
the
it
right or
defines
the wrong
everything.
side.
We think that it defines who you really are,
Yeah.
and obviously there are a lot of things that define. For example, it's pretty fascinating. Like if you have a hobby of some sort, maybe your hobby is something as straightforward as you love a certain sport, like you like basketball, college basketball, and then you find a group of people. Usually it's a group of guys
that
right?
like basketball,
that absolutely love college basketball.
And you watch basketball.
And you watch basketball, and then you start going to live college basketball games.
Yeah.
And then you start traveling across the country because you guys are so into it. Does it really make a difference with that group of guys who you share that thing with?
What your political beliefs are.
It really shouldn't.
I didn't sign up for the Donald Trump supporting basketball college aficionados club.
But unfortunately, it's becoming that way.
And it is.
It is
And
increasingly.
It's terrible.
And by the way, CNN has as much to do with it, and so does Google, by the way, and MSNBC. But CNN and Google and some of these companies like Google, I should say, they have a lot to do with this because that is part of how they hire you. Because they have so much power and they have so much, their workforce is so educated, okay? By the way, their workforce is very educated that they know how to look on all of your social media platforms to determine everything they know. They know, for example,
people are all very willing to put it out there.
If you grew up in Idaho, the chances are you probably grew up in a pretty conservative family. So they're going to look at that and they go, I'm going to find out everything I can find out about this person and probably not hire them.
Political scoring is an interesting science. If you know anything about the topic, like you don't actually have to know anything about the person, but you can, run a couple algorithms and look at a bunch of pictures, and you can probably, from what I understand, get a pretty accurate snapshot of what they believe your political affiliations are. It's really an interesting science.
It is, and it shouldn't be that way. And I mean, so let me give an example. Let me ask you guys for an example, the millennials. So clearly, you guys have a lot of friends.
All over the spectrum. I tend to not really care.
And so you probably have a certain thing that you love to do with your friends. I don't know what it is. It's like a hobby.
I play games a lot. Video games.
So video games.
We play video games.
It's totally relatable.
Online,
my son loves that too. And so, does it matter to you when you guys are on the same team? Playing video games against another, does it matter to you?
Never come up.
Exactly.
We're talking about games, and if we do talk about things other than games, we're talking about life, things going on, school. Our one buddy that we play with, he's in the military. We ask him how he's doing. He's over in Kentucky in the middle of nowhere, and so it's like you just talk about life things. We talk about PC parts, like really stupid nerdy stuff. I can't tell you. Sure, politics comes up once in a blue moon where we're talking about things related to the coronavirus because it's on everybody's minds.
It is.
And, they'll be like, we should all do this, that, and then I'll say blah, blah, blah. And then, the third person will have a third opinion separate from all of ours. And then we're like, all right, yeah, that's fair. Then we go back to playing games. It's just simple as that.
Which is the way it's supposed to be. And that at least that makes me hopeful as a boomer that the millennials are increasingly doing that. It's just that as a boomer, I just see some millennials
you're always going to see
become hyper
You're always going
partisan.
to see that, though, and that's always going to be so front and center because vocal people in vocal minorities tend to get elevated, because they're out there and they're the ones saying it. So while 90% of us can be normal, I'm not going to say the word normal, but we're pretty fair about all these things. It's that 10% of people who are going to come out and be absolutely, I hate you because of a R or a D next to your name. They're going to be the ones that go viral.
And by the way, I'm sure you've had this happen already. I have, where I've known someone for 20 years. And over the past 5 years, they have radicalized. They were always left of center, but for whatever reason, the past 5 years, they've just completely radicalized to the point where they don't even want to have a conversation with you, and they're actually angry at you, but there's no reason they're angry at you other than the fact that they know that you are maybe an elected official and the fact that you're on the opposite side of the spectrum.
And
so they're angry.
There is one of the things that I think is the reason that this is happening is I think as a society, a lot of us now lack empathy. The inability for people to put themselves in other people's shoes and understand that the reasons they think the way that they do is lost on a lot of people. I certainly understand why certain Democrats come to the perspectives they do, whether I agree with them or not. And I think that a lot of people need to stop being so, quick to lash out. Put yourself in somebody else's shoes for a day.
Yeah.
Think rationally about how they came to that point, whether you agree with it or not.
Yep, I love it.
Yep.
So next up, we have the dumbest bill in America. It's the dumbest bill in America. And do we have a lead up, Mr. Assistant Producer? Yep. And here it is.
Dum 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 dum.
And it's the dumbest bill in America, and it is, ready for it? Okay, it's a balloon release ban.
My favorite pastime.
So, if you like balloons and your balloon has helium in it, and you release the balloon, guess what? It's
civil fine,
it's
baby.
It's a $250 fine.
$250. And you know who the intended consequence of this? It's kids, man.
By the way, you have to be 13 years of age, I think, or older. I think that's right.
Okay, they did put that in there. Okay.
But you're still a kid. It's hello, Mr. 14-year-old. Here's a $250 citation because
you accidentally released a balloon.
You accidentally released a balloon. Well, according to Kai Hagen of Frederick, Maryland, he's a councilman in Frederick County, Maryland, who put the balloon ban in Frederick. He put the bill in, I don't know, 6-7 months ago. He said, well, it actually has to do with the intentional release of balloons.
How do you define intentional?
That's exactly right. I mean, what is an intentional release? I mean, did you intentionally release that? Okay, here's the line.
You're going to interrogate them, sit them down in the chair. So why did you release the balloon?
Yes, exactly. And in Frederick, Maryland, there's this article that came out, and there's a satirical Facebook page in Frederick, Maryland that opened up, which basically makes fun of this proposed balloon ban. By the way, the balloon ban did pass in Frederick, Maryland. And it was, I think, the third, because initially there was one in Queen Anne's County, and then there was another in a second county, and then Frederick County. And then guess what happened? Then the state of Maryland.
The state in bipartisan fashion.
So the state of Maryland, the state of Maryland, there are a couple of delegates that put a bill in to ban balloon releases in the state of Maryland.
Say no to fun.
And we actually have a clip of one of their supporters coming forth in the actual hearing, whereby they were testifying why this is such a great idea. And here is the clip.
Been a 3-year project for me. I got nowhere until Jay was able to get Queen Anne's County to go, and then Wicomico County, I was able to get that to go, and then Frederick just came out of the woodwork. And I will tell you that last week when we spoke at the Senate hearing for a similar bill, that we were told by the Anne Arundel County Senator as well as Montgomery County Senator that they are proposing legislation as well. So this is the bandwave. We got to get on it, and this is a great bill. So thank you so much for supporting it, hearing it, and thank you for your consideration.
So those are the key words.
Of the century.
It's
this
the
is
band
the band
wave.
wave, and we need to get on it.
It's the band wave.
Oh my God!
Because
Mark.
we're so woke, we must ban things. Ban.
Do you have any ban bills you want to put in your on your side job, Mark? Because now's the time, Mark. We got to get on the bandwagon.
I know we have to think of some ban ideas. You know, just
Can
because
we ban banning?
That's right. Well, we probably would get lots of bipartisan support for banning something because that's the thing.
That's the way to get bipartisan.
Because
this thing is bad. Let's get rid of it.
It doesn't require any thinking to ban, right? Because we can basically make up anything. And it's causing climate change. I want to ban it.
Look at the straw ban. They're not responsible. They can put the straw ban in, it can pass, but you're not responsible for figuring out how businesses and places that, rely, or special needs people who need straws.
Well, you are responsible because if you ban it, you won't even be able to have it.
Yeah, but they don't have to come up with the solution to help, bridge the gap.
They don't want to create the solution. That's the key.
And to help bridge the gap for businesses.
Just like the other conversations that we've had about, Greta Thunberg and others. It's like innovation is the answer, right? Not banning innovation. So if you have a balloon and the balloon doesn't biodegrade when it hits the ground or the water, then you know what? Create a balloon that does, and then that really truly does biodegrade, and then tell the whole world about it. And guess what? Everybody is going to want that balloon.
Especially
Imagine
if you
that.
can do it cheaper.
Yes, because exactly. Yeah. And there's, by the way, this hearing went on for quite some time in the Maryland House of Delegates.
Talk about balloons for an hour.
Talking about balloons, of course, and basically how woke they are and so forth. But they never, in these hearings, ever talk about the fact that we actually have a solution where you don't have to ban the balloon. You can just have a balloon that still has helium in it, but goes up in the air when you release it, and eventually when it comes back down to Earth, it biodegrades, and no one is hurt whatsoever. Yeah. But they, of course, there's a lot of hyperbole in this, right? We've seen thousands of balloons in the ocean, and and fish and so forth. By the way,
yes, that is a problem,
and it probably legitimately is a problem. So instead of banning, then why not put a bill in that provides some sort of economic incentive to innovate?
Also, banning balloons now doesn't deal with the issue that already presides. If there are thousands of balloons in there, just because I snapped our fingers and said no more balloons doesn't mean those balloons that are in the ocean go away. There's already been decades worth of environmental damage.
And there are groups that go out there and pick the balloons up, and sometimes the balloons find themselves on the beach. And so yes, but here's what I find crazy is I'm sure this individual is legitimately concerned about the balloons.
Of course.
But there's nothing we can't ban in the name of climate change if we start down this path.
Yes.
And by the way, here's what the bill says. A person may not knowingly and intentionally release or cause to be released or organize the release of a balloon into the atmosphere. Not balloons, a balloon.
This is that state of emergency abuse concern that they have in D.C. A lot of Republicans do when it comes to climate change, is that they're worried that, and certain Democratic candidates in the debates really early on actually said that they would do this. And that is basically that they would take climate change, they would declare a state of emergency, and they would use climate change as a vehicle to pass a lot of their, or not pass, just straight up legislate their their agenda and their bans.
Their
and
bans. That's all they have.
Their social engineering.
Yeah, they all they have is bans. They don't have solutions, real solutions. So of course they're gonna say, oh no, Mark and Garrick, we do have solutions, because when it comes to energy, we have solar as a solution, and of course,
God, what are you doing with all the
panels
old
when they're not being used?
They
right,
go in landfills.
They go in landfills, so it's not renewable, guys, and it's certainly not biodegradable.
Wind turbine sheets, those propellers that spin, those things aren't biodegradable, and they got to be repaired, I think, every year.
But exactly, and this is an easy one, right? A balloon release ban is an easy thing not to do, because you just say, create something that's biodegradable, guys.
Yeah.
We can figure this out. I mean, if there's anything we can figure out, this would be it.
Laws are only as good as A, people willing to follow them, and B, people willing to enforce them. And I can't see a law banning balloons being particularly effective, because first of all, if you let go of a balloon, there's got to be a cop within some reasonable distance to see it happen, and he's got to be able to point to you and say you did it, and then find out that it was intentional, versus as a kid, sometimes, man, the balloon just slips out of your hand.
It does,
It just does.
In fact, that same individual who was testifying for the ban of balloon releases, she said, sometimes I drive by new car dealerships and they use balloons all over the place for promotions, and sometimes those balloons get released. And in those,
that wouldn't even be subject to this law.
Because it's not intentional.
It's not intentional. God, sometimes, you know what? We had this issue and we want to solve it, so we're going to do it in intentional circumstances. I don't know a lot of people who are like, oh, I got this nice balloon here. Let's just let go of it, First of all, I like to take it home, probably suck the helium out of it and make the funny voice for 5 minutes, because what else do kids do? It's stupidity.
It is stupid. It is. So we have a local TV station talking about the ban. It's a real quick clip, and here it is.
You might want to keep a grip on those balloons at your next party. Some Maryland state lawmakers want to make it a civil offense to intentionally release balloons into the sky. The fine would be a lofty $250. Now, supporters say balloons cause all kinds of damage when they fall back to Earth by fouling up the waterways and hurting livestock and wildlife. The bill's sponsors emphasize their legislation would not target children who let go of a balloon.
So there you go. So folks in Pennsylvania, I just have a suggestion for you. Can you please stand on the border with Maryland and do a massive release of 20,000 balloons, and then put put something that's on the balloon that you like with a marker, and just really, tell the people of Maryland that there's a better solution, and the solution would be innovation.
I saw a tweet on, well, of course I saw a tweet on Twitter, but, I saw a tweet, and the city of Chicago, I think it's the city of Chicago, maybe it's Detroit or something. It's one of those, northern Midwest cities, and they do, every year this annual big balloon release thing. And it's so cool because it's 100,000 balloons just fly up out of the city, and it's really neat to look at. And then I saw somebody quote tweeted it, and of course, what was the first thing they were talking about? They're like, the environment. And it's of course, we can't just enjoy a good thing.
We can't. By the way, I'm going to ban, I'm going to put a bill in to ban face masks that aren't biodegradable. Okay. How about that,
Yeah, I mean, think about it. How many people have disposable face masks? I know that the ones that I've been using are.
I mean, landfills must be full of face masks by now, I would think. So they should be biodegradable or edible or something like that,
recyclable.
Or recyclable.
Edible. Edible face mask? Get the candy face mask? All right, Mark.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I'm going to mandate that, but at the same time, I'm going to ban the other ones because, that's what the woke do.
Yeah.
So, and well, that's the final word for Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher, and thank you to our millennial Garrick Ross.
Always a pleasure.
Lots of fun, and of course, our producer Adam Couture and our assistant producer Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our website. See you next time.